Mm-hmm. That's a nice touch. Nice touch.
Hey.
I mean, the festive spirit already.
Yeah, I was one of the first on the street to put the lights up, and then all the followers joined in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was all because of you.
It has nothing to do with the season. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. This is This Week in Design, working title, maybe. And I
like it.
I'm Tommy Geoco, and aka DesignerTom, joined with Hunter Hammonds here. He looks a little different today, you know? So
better than
hey,
ever.
Hunter, great to have you.
I'm going to try to channel my inner Hunter.
Yeah, I think we can do it. Hunter, by the way, will be joining us a little bit later. Hunter just welcomed baby Tegan. Yeah, little baby Tegan over this past week. We weren't even sure if he was going to be making it with us today, and he's sneaking away. So that's going to be pretty cool. Baby Tegan, by the way, looking real healthy. I want to give this a quick shout out. Oh shoot, this is why we need a producer, Rid. You have a producer on your podcast?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm jealous because every time I do this, I muck it up. I'll show Baby Tegan in just a second, but joined today, Rid. He was going to keep me company. Rid, the co-host or only host of Dive Podcast, one of my favorite design podcasts, founding designer at Maven, an all-around smiley guy. But Hunter just jumped in, so Rid, we don't need you anymore.
Nice, perfect.
No, we got to have Rid. We got to have Rid.
Yeah. See you, Rid. Sorry.
I love that Rid is here because everything Rid does is so put together and polished. It's like Rid really sits down and thinks about the things that he introduces to the world. And Tommy, you and I are just a bunch of fucking idiots.
Yeah, it's going to stretch me a little bit here.
There's no telling like what situations we're going to try and put you in today.
Rid, I'm warning you. There's a little bit of an ambush coming your way today.
There is an ambush.
Oh gosh. Okay,
right. Great. We'll get you rolling. But hey, congratulations, baby Tegan and Mama Hammonds right here.
Yeah.
A lot of drugs, maybe right there.
Not a lot, man. Not a lot. Just a little fentanyl, you know. Gotta stay hard in these streets. That's all.
How is he?
Things are great, man. Things are good. It's still a little bit of chaos in our house, so I apologize if there's any background audio that happens today. Yeah, things are good, man. Only had to stay in the hospital one night. It was great.
That's awesome. For the total count is 4 now.
The total count is 4 and final. So my Christmas gift to my wife is that I'm going to go get clipped and I'm going to be half of a man, but you know, got to do what we got to do.
Heard it's a pretty chill procedure, actually.
I think physically it's chill. Psychologically,
yeah,
we can get into that another time.
Rid, you had your first this year, correct?
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm like thinking back to the days after I got back from the hospital and like life shuts down. You can't really think about anything else. And I'm like, and Hunter's just like 12 hours later and he's just live broadcasting. I'm like, I guess that's the difference between your first and your fourth.
Yeah, it is. You and I were texting last night, Red, to finish your interview for Today in Design. You're like, I appreciate the dedication. I'm like, man, yeah, things are calm here. You know, life must move on. Tom, you also have 4. Let's get into this story you told the other day.
Yeah, you know what? So what's interesting is my kids are teenagers, all but one. The oldest is getting ready. He's looking at colleges, and he did his practice SAT, and he got like a 1300. And full disclosure, I am not college educated. I didn't even take my SAT. So I was like, I think 1300's all right. And he's like, no, it's not good enough. And so I've been having to do a lot of research to really help him through this journey. He's like dead set on Ivy League. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to figure it out. And so it's been this thing of like trying to support him in those goals and, you know, all the things around that. And then I've got this like second oldest, and he's just like, you could give 2 shits about school. He likes sports, but he likes art, and he's so good at it. And I've got all these friends who like tattoo artists make some money if you know what you're doing, apparently.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think I want to check that out. And so I'm like talking to my buddy. He's like, hey, could he come to the shop and like see what that actually looks like. You know, you got these other two kids who just like love sports and they're kind of ballers. And so I'm like, okay, how do I put them into training programs and all this stuff? And it's just been, I have no idea what I'm doing. I never feel like I know what I'm doing. Have you guys had to deal with like RID? Probably not yet. Probably still like just supporting them walking a little bit maybe at this point. Yeah. It's been like
that's about it.
But I'll tell you this though. I had the kids had a sleepover last week, and one of his friends, this is my 12-year-old, so he's like, I think technically generation alpha, right? And he has this sleepover, and the kid pulls out this doc, because I always make fun of like the language that they use, and he has this whole Apple Notes document of what everything means.
I'm just slang.
And I want to ask you guys if you know what some of these words mean. So stand by, because I'm gonna let's throw this out here. All right. Easy. I think this one's easy. I knew this one already. Unk. What is unk?
Uncle.
Like what is it? But what does it mean?
Like older homie.
Rid's got nothing.
And this game's gonna suck for me.
it's like a respectful term for like the OG. You know. Okay. So he shared with me his Apple Notes, and it's this kid like deciphering all this. So skibbity. Are we familiar with skibbity?
Get out of here.
No, I haven't heard that one, man.
You're just making these up.
I think you're just
not kidding. Skibbity's a real phrase that gets thrown around like nothing.
You just want me to respond and say that it's real so that you can make fun of me.
This is the ambush.
Yeah. Oh, we've got more coming. Skibbity, his definition of skibbity is just skibbity. So no one knows what skibbity means apparently, but it did start from this internet meme of these like giant toilets versus these radio heads, and it took this whole lore. So I know this because I'm on TikTok, and it became these toilets with these giant heads fighting. They call them skibbity toilets, fighting these animated like giant audio heads. It's as ridiculous as it sounds. This lore, I read this I think in this summer, has more views and followers than every single Disney franchise.
What?
Yes.
Like
I was reading this, and it's crazy. And I think Michael Bay, and this is not a joke, is actually directing a movie based on the skibbity toilet lore.
No way.
I now someone needs to fact check that, because it sounds ridiculous, but like this is a wild thing.
This is another reason why we need a producer.
I got two more. I don't
know how these topics got into today's conversation.
I got two more.
I'm sorry, viewers.
Riz. What is Riz?
Charisma.
Oh, charisma. Yeah. We got it. Yeah. We got it. Okay. And what is aura?
Aura.
I
want to say vibes, but I know that that's not cool to say anymore. No.
It's like if you got like aura, it's like you're just oozing.
There's like a presence. There's like a presence. Right. You walk into a room,
you got good aura.
It.
Yeah. Anyway, this is the list that my son's friends, Generation Alpha, he had a whole Apple Notes doc on this, and his parents. We need to be ready, boys. We need to be ready for the deciphering.
I'm there, man. Remember, we've got 16 and 15, so
which are technically Gen Z, I think. Because even my 17-year-old is like, I don't understand all that. And it's weird to see my gap. It's weird to see the gap between them. I'm like, oh, there's like generational gap in my own kids who are like on different levels. It's funny. Welcome to it. So all you parents, maybe some of you relate to the strife.
I love it. Let's talk about design.
Yeah.
We got RID. We got
I've got a couple topics, and this one's been beat to death already. But we got to talk about it, guys. Yeah. And I really want some opinions.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
A few years back, in one of my very, very short stints where I was employed, I was directing digital for a really big agency. I'm not going to name names. I don't even think legally I can. But we were in a pitch meeting. We were in St. Joseph, Michigan, which is where Whirlpool is headquartered. And so we're in a meeting at Whirlpool headquarters for their luxury appliance brand Genair. And they hired our agency to do all the digital, right? So to essentially build like the IoT applications to control the appliances and a bunch of other really cool stuff. Pretty exciting project. We're in this pitch meeting because they're going to unveil the new brand, right? And they had hired Digitas to do this. But this is going to like, I'm going to reveal a little bit of the fuckery of the big agency world. They hired Digitas to do this, but Digitas had previously burned Whirlpool on another project. So they had to create a new name and they called it Dark Horse. That way, this brand manager at Whirlpool, who directed the Genair brand, could allow Digitas to come pitch. And so they give this crazy pitch. They've got, I swear to you, it almost looks identical to the stuff that we saw from Jaguar. And this is 2017, I think, 2017. And they're going through this pitch. They're crushing it. Like they're telling a great story. They have these like crazy visuals. They're a little extreme. They're pitching like, dude, we should have Run the Jewels like in the commercial, presenting the fridge and like all this stuff. And they get to the end and the last slide, it's Genair, stay woke. And
that's the tagline.
That was the tagline. And our entire team just looks at each other and we're like, what in the fuck just happened? But I swear to you, the brand manager, all these brand directors at Whirlpool, this whole Digitas team, they all thought it was the most brilliant idea anybody had ever had. They were so excited about it. Stay woke. And I'll never forget that as the peak of ridiculousness that these big brands will come up with. When a brand director goes nuts and just lets some agency like pitch their ass off. And so when I saw the Jaguar stuff, especially with like, you know, the whole, is it Live Woke? That was their thing or whatever.
We'll look at the video here in a second. Yeah, look at this.
It just brought me back to that moment. And that's how I imagine this playing out. I imagine somebody in this meeting was like, you know what we should do? We should be woke. And that's what happened. This is the outcome of a meeting like that.
I can't find the tweet. I think one of the, I don't know if it was the creative director, someone had pointed out that he was pretty, he was a big part of, I guess, starting 13 DEI groups. And I don't really know what that means inside of Jaguar.
I saw this, yeah.
And I was trying to find the tweet. I couldn't figure it out. So, I mean, there's a wokeness to it. There's like an avant-garde attempt at it. But like the biggest thing is it's a huge deviation, no matter what it is, from kind of that James Bond luxury thing they've had for decades.
I love that it's like copy nothing, break molds, but then they're basically copying the sledgehammer lady from the Apple 1984 ad.
I have a hope that, like, you remember when Snoop Dogg tweeted that he's quitting smoking? Do you remember this? It went nuts viral. And then like a week later, it turned out it was just this setup for an elaborate ad to sell grills. And he's like, nah, I'm using this grill instead. That's my hope. I'm like, the timer's going down. I'm like, maybe there's 36 hours left. Or I'm like, when's the, just kidding, guys. Like, we're still timeless. We would never do this. And it turns into like one of the most genius marketing campaigns ever.
Yep.
I'm crossing my fingers, but with every hour, it's slipping away.
And it's slipping away.
Yeah. Someone said, and they made comparisons with this, like still frames from the video to the Apple commercials. And they're like, oh, this is clearly Apple's purchase of the car to do these things. Waymo cars are Jaguars, are they not?
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the last time that I really thought about Jaguar.
It was Waymo for me. Like, I hadn't thought about it in a long time until we wrote the Waymo together. And I was like, whoa, this is a Jaguar. This is so cool. The fact is, like, their numbers were tanking. Like, the James Bond is what we associated with them with, but like, it wasn't working. And I'm sure they had a heck of a lot of numbers in front of them to extrapolate it out and be like, okay, actually, our target customer base is on the way out. It's already not working. We have to do something drastic. It's just a shame that this is what it looks like.
I mean, isn't it in a way though? Like, isn't there a streak of brilliance in it? Because like, if you look at some of the visuals in context with some of the shots that they've been showing with the renders of a vehicle, you're like, okay, I can actually connect these dots and see what they're doing, and it's not that bad in context. I think part of the reason the brand received such a harsh reaction is because it's not in context. It's just this avant-garde video, and you're just like, what in the fuck are you thinking? But the brilliance in it is that it's received so much attention. Like if they just rolled out a new car with a new logo on it, like Audi just did this. Audi just did to where their new EV vehicles don't have the same Audi logo, and it barely got a mention. But now Jaguar does this out of context thing, and the whole internet's talking about it. So I guess, is it true that all press is good press?
I was gonna ask the same thing. Click into the actual tweet, Tommy. How much does it have? I've been paying attention to what the main tweet has for impressions.
Yeah.
What's it up to now? 100? Is that 150? Oh my gosh.
157 million
That's
views.
crazy. That's crazy.
But and even just, oh my gosh.
So you see like whatever. Yeah. So this is just the last 7 days for Jaguar. So I mean, the discussion is there, right?
We'll pay a heck of a lot of attention to whatever they release. When that car does come out, everybody's going to be looking at that car.
I kind of feel like they should have timed it with the product launch, right? No?
I think so, yes. To me, they should have.
I think that because I think that that's such a disconnect. But like my question is it that, and maybe you guys know this, is the next product launch supposed to be like more accessible to people? Is it like a very different style?
I think it's supposed to be a very different style, like their glimpse into the future. But I mean, all that aside, I guarantee you this campaign will win awards. It'll win agency awards, 100%.
I lean towards that too.
Yeah, it'll win like golden lions, whatever they are. I can't remember anymore.
We're talking about it. The three of us are literally dedicating time to talk about it right now.
Yeah, let's move on. I don't. Let's talk about something that did well. Let's go talk about eBay.
the eBay rebrand.
Yeah, let's talk about design systems.
Well, I have something to share with you, Red. You released a little snippet not long ago, did you not? What was that? Yesterday?
Well, so fill me in. What I don't know what you're talking about.
Here, I got you.
Give me and the listeners some context here.
Yeah,
what did our boy Red do?
So he drops a 8-minute video. This was, your insights are so pithy and you're so articulate. I want to call it out. You don't fluster. You don't fluster, Red. So today I'm gonna see if you fluster a little bit.
Okay,
all right?
Hit me.
New segment. You say it's time to rethink design systems. Somehow they become synonymous with scale. And you had some takes in here. I thought they were pretty good takes. I liked a lot of what you called here and the people you've talked to about design systems. It's always great. Dan Mall says, I love Michael Rittering. I'm a huge fan of the Dive Club podcast and disagree with almost every conclusion here. and I love it. And Dan Mall, who is wonderful. You met Dan at Config. Was that the first time? Did you have a chance to meet him there?
I met him when I was first. Oh gosh, I've met him like a few years ago. Actually,
right?
Like he reached out to me about Figma Academy probably 3 or 4 years ago. We've kind of just been in touch since. And then we played basketball together at Config. Was like the first time I actually met him in person.
Hold on, I'm gonna call Dan real quick. Let me just.
You're calling Dan?
I just want to see if he's around. I want to hear his takes. Is actually what I want to do. I want to hear what he has to say, and I want to hear what you think about his takes on this.
I think I know his takes.
Oh, do you? Do you?
I think so.
Dan's been super helpful with design systems for me. Maybe this is the.
Oh yeah.
Hold on. I'm gonna get him in here.
You don't have the kind of pull that you thought you did, Tommy.
I know. I thought it was like.
This is a learning moment for everybody.
I'm humbled, guys. I'm humbled. Let me send this over. Can you summarize what some of the takes were in this video without the 8-minute watch?
Yeah. Basically, design systems are obvious and they too often are like the thing that you do once you've figured out the UI and it's like a big company like, okay, we figured it out. Now let's standardize it with the design system. But actually, design system as the very first step for a startup who has no idea what the product is yet, doesn't have product market fit, it's actually really, really interesting. Because if you think about it as a box of Legos that aren't connected and not a system, then all you do is give yourself the ability to assemble UIs more quickly and minimize the amount of knobs that you have to turn to make changes. And yet so many startups look at a design system and they're like, well, we're a startup, we don't do that. And then they're just doing a bunch of things by hand. And then when they realize they have some insight, it's like, oh, we now know this about the product. Okay, let's make 8 manual changes around here. But it's like, dude, every product I've designed for 10 years has had buttons and forms and drop downs. And if you're designing for web, the chances that they're like 48 pixels tall are pretty good. It's like not rocket science here. So I think just starting with those is day one. And that's why I like the Perplexity use case, because they didn't even know what Perplexity was going to be. They didn't even know what the product was yet. And yet he being Henry, the head of design and the founding designer, came out of the gate with a design system. And so I wanted to shine a light on that because I think it's a different way of thinking about it.
I'm curious to hear from you, Hunter, having the agency stuff. Like, how do you think about design systems at agency levels?
I don't.
You guys don't have like scaffolds sometimes or things that you work from? I've heard that some agencies do stuff like that depending on the type of work.
I mean, what you're going to find is that unless you're specifically being brought in to work on a design system project, most agencies, or excuse me, most enterprise companies are typically going to be working from like out of the box stuff. Like Ant Design is a really popular one, for example. So we've seen people work with that. One UI is another one that you'll typically see, and then maybe they'll like add their own flavors to it. But for the most part, I think seeing design systems at that enterprise scale is it's kind of noteworthy still, right? Like you don't see a lot of people doing it really well. They're typically just kind of pulling off the shelf because they don't invest in it a ton. So I'd say that's what I've typically seen. And then obviously, the companies that do invest in doing the design systems, there's a lot of nuance there that Dan could definitely share a lot of takes on. But to Rid's point, yeah, I don't know that I guess it depends on how we're defining a startup, right? Like what size is the startup? But I don't think a design system typically makes a lot of sense for a pre-product market fit startup to worry about. Unless they're doing something that inherently requires, product to be spread across a lot of different mediums, like iOS, Android, native desktop support, web, etc. Yeah, I don't know.
I think I've created one design system that actually stuck around, and every other attempt at design systems and all like in-house stuff didn't end up getting adopted like widespread through the company.
Was it
It's like
Evo?
Oh,
did you do it for eBay?
I didn't do it for eBay, but eBay's playbook here is like, it's pretty nice. Like it's got aura, I'm a fan.
It's not Skibbity.
I love good design docs. They're spooky to look at for especially like early stage companies or designers trying to like get something off the ground, because you can easily look at these incredible documents and go, oh, we need to be that. And no, it's like, no, you don't need to be that, nor do you have the time or resources to be that. It's easy to get stuck in that trap, I think.
I think that's fair.
I don't know if you've seen that. Do you guys have a design system like day one at Maven?
I mean, yes. But I think and then this is part of my problem with it is like, you say the word design system and like we all just have a picture of something big
like
and
this.
Gnarly and like this. And it's because like these are all the open examples. Like a company drops a design system, like, and it's like, oh wow, now we have this new design system to look at and draw inspiration from. And it's like, this is such a trap for like 99% of teams.
Yeah.
But it's like become synonymous with how we think about a design system. So like, yeah, I would say we had a design system at Maven, but there wasn't even a card component in it. Like even just something as simple as a card is too complex because now you're dealing with like the relationship between components. And if you ignore the relationship and just think about like, again, like this box of like open-ended one-off Legos that you can use in any way with no rules, if you call that a design system, then yes. And so I think it's like, either we have to bring that into the definition of the design system, or we need to have more adoption around different terminology, like a design kit or something else that makes more companies feel okay about that level of investment while safely ignoring what we're looking at now, which is beautiful, but it's just like, come on.
Who had
that?
called it a design toolkit that you were referencing?
Raphael Schad called it that when he was same kind of thing. Like he made a mini system very early when he was building Cron, which he sold to Notion in, I think, like under a couple of years, maybe.
Right.
And so like there is, I don't know, it's like some of it is just like language. Like we just need different language because there's a lot of baggage right now on the phrase design system, and then we're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's true. My most successful design system, I was trying to find the sketch file and zoom in on this because I thought it was like interesting. We had this product that was super just separated across legacy tech and like new front end stacks, and we had a lot of different product teams going at once, and some still had to use legacy. So we like, for example, if we had a modal component, one modal component was built in the old visual style and also built in the old front-end framework. Then we had the new front-end framework, but it had to be the old visual style. And then we had the new front-end framework and the new visual style. So we had to track that because each one of those had a use case, but we knew directionally over time we'd be going to that third bucket. And our design system documentation was just a screen, like an artboard in Figma, and a screen capture of absolutely every variation of that modal everywhere. And it just kind of said like, here's everything. Here's old, here's like new A, and here's new B. And we'd kind of point to people.
I'm sure it was people's favorite thing to reference to.
But
I'm
it
sure
was
they
also
loved
until that was like actually inventoried, because it was never inventoried. It was just kind of discussed abstractly, like, oh yeah, that's over here in this thing. It was kind of like a map that had never existed. So in the absence of it, it was useful, but it was still, it's a laughing situation because it's still like, wow, this is where we're at, huh?
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
But that's a design system, kind of like that actually kind of works. And you just point a link, and like you have a couple. A lot of my documentation would just be like bullet point lists on the side of an artboard. And we would we would try to organize our pages the best way, and it got it done. Developers knew what they were looking at. I think that's kind of all that matters sometimes. Like I love good documentation. I love good redlining, good instructions inside of Figma. In the absence of that, like a bullet point list, I think the bullet point list is so underrated. I really do. Like in just applying it next to whether it's design justifications in Figma or whatever the case is, or obviously the commenting system works really well here too. But when I'm just on the fly, like riffing on things, I'll just bullet point stuff on the side of like a Figma artboard. And that has gotten me far, doing something really simple and kind of scrappy like that, you know?
Just draw a rectangle, bro.
Says the agency guy who just gets to just blank slate, just like, yep, here we go.
Yep.
Next.
I don't do anything. I mean,
that's right.
Saying,
I'll say one thing to your point about documentation. I don't get excited about the vast majority of use cases for AI inside of design tools, but documentation specifically related to like design systems, guidelines, best practice, that's going to be cool. Because it's like, it shouldn't even be a static place. We shouldn't even have to ask the question, where does this live? Like that should feel so antiquated soon, where you would be able to just feed every piece of context that you have for a visual language into a system and then query it from anywhere that you're working and have this always up to date, everything you need on demand at your fingertips. I can't wait. That's like one of the clear use cases I'm really excited about.
100% agree with that. I think that that's going to be a huge. You think that's going to be its own product, or do you think that's going to be just like a plugin inside of Figma?
It might start as that, but it feels like an easy win for Figma. And I think everything that Figma is doing is positioning themselves to try to be at the heart of a brand. You know, like the heart of a product is not actually deep enough. Like that's not like the roots, you know. Figma wants to be at like, what is the essence of this brand? Because that's what you can then spit out onto every single possible medium and give them like endless opportunities for expansion. So like, to me, this is a perfect example where like Figma should put themselves right at the core of a brand guideline.
I see that. I want to show you this. I finally found it. I'm going to share it. Like legacy.
Beautiful.
Not sure. Some intentional future.
I love how the not sure is the biggest bucket too. Oh, never mind.
I mean, like iconography, like this was the mess, man. This was the mess, you know. Our modals. Let's look at those modals. Like,
you got to have a love for the game to do this, man.
Yeah, you know. It was this was how we started to standardize 7 years of design debt. And everything that comes with moving from, in this case, we were using like one UI template, or they had been using one UI template, and we had outgrown that significantly. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of fun though. I actually really enjoy going through an existing product with a lot of pieces and taking inventory of patterns that exist and like documenting those in like really scrappy ways. I used to do the painstaking effort of trying to recreate those patterns. So if you join as a design hire, a lot of times like a Figma file doesn't necessarily exist as a first design hire. So like the developers have just kind of put it together, and you're like, oh, let me go recreate that so I can manipulate it later in Figma. And I'm like, sometimes just take a screenshot. It's okay, you know, until you need to. I'm just very scrappy like that. That's something that I don't like to waste too much time on if I don't need to.
Yeah, I totally get that.
But hey, Dan just texted me. Dan's gonna jump in here in a couple of minutes. So, I hope your arguments are airtight, right?
Yeah, man, I've been practicing in the mirror.
He's got some really strong opinions about these design systems, and he's really, really good at talking about them.
I was just about to say, there are strong opinions, and then there are people that are like as articulate in those opinions as Dan.
Yeah.
Should we coach you, Red? Do you want to tell us your takes, and we can kind of coach you before Dan gets in here and schools you?
I got it in my back pocket. I'll slip into like basketball trash talk. Okay. Because I was able to kind of hand it to him on the court last time we played. Yes. So I'm just like, really, with Dan, it's just about getting under his skin, and you don't have to be on topic to do that. I just got to rattle him a little bit.
Okay. Fair.
There's a design face-off show that used to be called the Design League, their season 1. And Hunter, you just linked me to the Arena, which is like its second season. And Dan and I faced off in this, and he mopped me up, dude. Like it was a landing page challenge. We had 30 minutes, and he mopped me up. And
Dan's sneaky good, man. He's sneaky good at visuals.
Can we talk about this real quick? So I don't keep up with these things as well as I should, but I'd seen the Arena, and I don't know if it's still a thing or not.
The Arena just concluded.
Oh, it did.
Few months ago. Yeah.
Okay. So I had seen that, and I was like, we should do our own version of this, right? But probably like very different. I think we should go Squid Games, and people should actually die for detaching components. But I was like, we should do that, and he told me. So it was first called the Design League, and then they called it Arena. So it's the same thing, or these are two different things?
Yeah, it used to be in Reloom, and now it's outside of Reloom, right?
It was first hosted by the product Reloom. Yeah. Webflow was also a partner sponsor. I think the Arena was going to be like a Webflow specific thing. It didn't. So this is run by Josh Lowe. He's kind of the producer of this thing. And I think it's an independent production right now. It's funny you mentioned the Squid Games thing. because Josh did just put some tweet out a month ago. I think he wants to do something like that, and he's testing interest around that. And I agree. I think there's room for lots of these things. I think it's really cool to see designers just work on this stuff. And anyway, I love that. But I
love this model.
Yeah, I think it's so cool.
I want to see so much more of this in the community.
I want to see the ink masters of on premise and designers just facing off and just talking a little smack, like old Dan Mall here is probably going to do in a second.
Yep.
Who I just mentioned had mopped me up in this. Dan.
Wow, that was the perfect timing.
That segued.
What's up, homies?
Almost like it was
really
planned.
Good. What's up, Dan?
How's it going?
It's going
better now.
Hunter, don't you have a baby?
I do.
Congratulations. What are you doing here?
Thank you, buddy. I'm just hanging out, gotta breathe, gotta breathe.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you, bud.
I woke Dan from his slumber. I don't know. What were you just doing now, Dan?
Sleeping. No, I'm just kidding. I was on a call.
I was like, I'm going to call Dan. And I thought I was going to get so many cool points. And then it just kept ringing and ringing. And I just felt like the word we learned today, aura, draining from me. Yeah. As parents, we were going over a list of all these cool words. But I particularly loved this hot take here, dude.
Yeah, this is how I know I made it.
when Dan gives you the retweet.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to say about it. It's just stirring up hot drama.
As we get into this real quick, I just want to make sure people realize what's about to happen live, because I know that this is recorded and we'll share it later, whatever. But like, this is a special moment to where a live audience is about to see Dan Ball just rip into Rid. And I feel like that deserves as much exposure as possible. So let me just tweet a little screenshot of this.
Yeah.
Want to see at Rid get absolutely
annihilated is the word.
This is the marketer.
Okay.
What kind of hype are we building here?
I'm ready.
No, we were telling Rid that he's always so articulate and well composed on the pod. It's like, no, Rid, do you fluster? Is the question.
Yes.
The answer is about to be yes.
Yes. I mean, this is a no holds barred kind of thing.
Dan,
Right?
Dan has like the sickest collection of sneakers, by the way. Do you take your sneakers off before you like get scrappy?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I always keep them on.
Oh, you like to beat some butt in style. Okay.
Yeah, totally. It's not one of those like let me take my earrings off before we get down. No.
Dan, were you as color coordinated before you hopped on here, or did you make a concerted effort to be this color coordinated?
No, this is I woke up like this.
I believe it.
He has aura,
speaking of sneakers, I got the camo sneakers today too.
Hell yeah.
my wife blinged them out too. She's been making charms.
That's sick.
I expected nothing less.
So yeah, it's a camo day today.
Swag.
Yeah. Dan swagged out. Rid's got a fucking sweater on. Let's go.
Yeah, this is the ambush.
I like it though. It's like a throwback. It's like the like the Denver Nuggets jersey.
Yeah.
You two faced off in basketball, by the way.
We did. Rid held it down. I got mad respect for him after that. He definitely showed up.
Turns out that designers are a bunch of short nerds.
Who would have thought?
How tall are you?
How
tall are you?
6'3", which on a basketball court with designers is pretty tall, it turns out.
That explains a lot. So you're just a tall nerd. There we go.
Oh, totally. You put me on a court with someone who's 6'5" and has even just like an inkling of fundamentals, I'm completely nullified. Completely.
Yeah.
But if I'm the tallest, I can hold my own.
All right. So what are these design system takes that Rid had that Dan vehemently disagreed with? I want to get into this because we talked about design systems last week, and we actually talked about you, Dan. We talked about Dan's love for design systems, and we coined the new term designer fuckboys for the whole idea of like just draw a rectangle, ignoring the reality of how actual businesses at scale work when it comes to building things and needing a design system. So Rid, you had some hot takes, or you know what, Rid, I don't really think you have hot takes. I think you have like cold, nuanced, articulate takes. So hopefully we can get some hot takes from you today.
Damn.
But what were these takes?
Cold, ice.
I mean, no,
icy,
cold. Yeah.
That's why he's wearing the sweater today.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I'm chilly, man.
Rid's deliberate.
I'll shake it off.
No, I mean that with love. Like very deliberate. That is a compliment. So let's get what we got. What was take number one?
I should have pulled it up here. The first one is, I think, the hook, right? So first of all, it's like excellent hook. Way to get me reading. Way to get everybody watching. It's cool. I forget what it is off the top of my head. I should pull it up. Britt, do you remember what it is? It's design systems or something like the pendulum swung or design.
It's time to rethink.
Probably pendulum swung. Oh,
yeah.
Rethink. Yeah, I don't know.
Time to rethink design. I think that's what it was, which is like, sure. All right,
Gotcha.
that's a good way to call it out. that's cool. It's got me listening. And okay, so a couple things here. One is, I think a lot of the things that in the video were like really triggering, and maybe triggering is too heavy a word, is like all the stuff that's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they call design systems like a big company word. I'm like, but it is like that's kind of what they're for, or at least a kind of them. And then as I listen to it more and more, I'm like, I actually don't think there's a lot of hot takes in here. And I think that's the hot take, is like, it's like a hot take of not hot takes. And that makes me want to do a hot take around it. So I get more specific about it, but that was the
general. I really am cold, man.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, like I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And then I was like, okay, I got to do something about this, but I don't know what. And then Tommy's like, you should come and be on the show. I'm like, all right, I'll come be on the show.
I gave Rid no warning. I just wanted to.
It's funny.
Oh, you didn't know?
Like, oh, I had no idea. They showed up and I like got on having no idea what we were going to talk about. And then they just said, you're going to get ambushed. I'm like, great. Okay. But it's funny because like whenever you did the whatever the LinkedIn version of like a retweet is, I was like, man, I didn't think that I said anything that crazy, which makes sense now. It makes sense.
So I think it's like a lot of the folks that you had on and that you had pulled some clips from are folks that are working on startups, folks that are not working at like big companies, enterprises, the Googles of the world, all of that kind of stuff, and are talking about how design systems for them are like maybe overkill. And then also in the same breath, and also I don't think I know any of those people either. So I'm like, I know of their work. I don't really know them personally, so I can't say. And then I think in the same breath also saying like, yeah, but I also have a design system too. Right. And for some of them, that design system's like a Figma file with a bunch of stuff in it that they can pull from. I think Henry from Perplexity was like, I built a little thing that's like our kit of stuff. And then I think there was a thing kind of at the end, which was like it. And I forget if you had said it, Rid, or if somebody else, and that like, yeah, we don't really have to worry about how connected those things are. And I was like, I think that's the thing that made me go, okay, we might be talking about something way different here. Is to me, like, if it's a system, it's got to be connected to something, right? And if it's not, then what are we making? How are we actually making our work better and easier? And, all the stuff that design systems or design kits or, whatever are trying to do. And then the last piece, about it that I would love all of your thoughts on is like, I think that we spend way too much time, even though I agree, I think we spend way too much time talking about like, what should we rename design systems to, than actually doing the work that design systems or whatever they are supposed to actually do for us. And it just reminds me, and I don't mean to take it here too specifically, but part of the triggering part for me is it reminds me of conversations about racism, conversations about a lot of really big issues where like we tend to debate the nuances of the thing than actually the thing that is important about the issue itself. So I don't mean to take it in that place unintentionally, but like that's the part that I'm like, I'm losing track of the discussion around design systems anymore because of what they are, what they're supposed to be, or what we want them to be, or what the definitions like. We're talking about all the nuances of it, and I think losing sight of the fact that they're a means to an end.
So can we back up then real fast, Dan? Here's what I'd love to do. I want to think about a design system in terms of what actually is it, right? And I think there's probably a really important lens for us to use here, which is the different stages of a company's journey. Whether you're kind of a seed stage startup to like, well, let's actually just define it as like pre-product market fit to product market fit. And then as we get into where I think you've spent a lot of time in your career, which is like mid-market size companies into the enterprise and like true Fortune 500s, like, do you think that a design system is the same artifact across all of those stages? Like how do you look at it on a spectrum and then define it at each stage of a company's journey?
I have an answer to that. I'm curious about all of yours too. Like what do you guys say a design system is?
Let's go with Rid first, since he's the arbiter of this conversation.
I hate this question. I think at its simplest form, a design system is a core set of building blocks that exist in code, ideally Figma 2, but they have to be in code, that allow a team to build more quickly and ensure like a cohesive interface at scale.
That's a good definition. I like that.
I buy it. How about you, Tommy?
Set of standards. If I were to break it down into like algebra, there's probably some documentation, a rule set that doesn't have to be fancy. It could be a bullet point list, just some instructions. Maybe that documentation is just a visual, and then a connectedness with production. I think that part is probably a pretty big component, and then an actual like intentional adoption across teams.
Well, that would be the use, not necessarily what it is, right? So Dan, what is the Dan Mall definition of a design system?
Before I go, do you have one, Hunter?
Oh boy,
see how sneaky he is. See that he tried
to
get out of it.
Trying to host.
Dan, you're not
Dan.
coming back on the show, Dan. Yeah, I think a design system is a set of standards, and I think it's a set of point in time constraints on the way an organization should approach the building blocks of their product. And most of the time, I actually think a design system at the core should really revolve around the culture and the standards of how a company decides upon like how they document what they build, when they build it, what constraints they agree upon, and how they unify consensus across the org.
Cool. I like all of those things, and I think part of the challenge about design systems is that all of you are right, or all of those apply depending on what we're talking about. Like that's the nuance. So like I have a YouTube video about this. This is called "What is a Design System?" And I have 7 different kinds of design systems that I've identified. It just depends on the company. So I used to go. I would say like 2 or 3 years ago, before that, I would go around being very vigilant about like, if you have a UI kit, that's not a design system. If you have a component library, that's not a design system, because reasons, whatever, XYZ, I justified it however I did. And now I'm like, well, what I've learned from that is like, I was just gatekeeping, I was just invalidating a bunch of people and what they've got. So to me, I'm like, if you have like a brand language and a visual identity, like that's a design system. That's a kind of design system. And for a specific kind of company or team or whatever, that's a really good design system. It doesn't help you on the code side, but that doesn't mean it's not a design system. If you're Google or if you're Salesforce or if you're, whomever, like a package managed, version controlled, deployed to production, connected, all of that's in code, that's in design, that's Figma, that's React, that's all the stuff. That's a design system too. Those two things are really, really different, but it doesn't mean that one of those is not a design system and another one is. So like, I think that there's so many different kinds, and part of it does come from the idea that like the words design and the word system are both very general. So you put 2 general words together, it's still general, right? So like, and that the conundrum then becomes, if we come up with a definition that's so broad that it applies to startups that are pre-market fit, as well as big organizations that have been around for decades, we end up with a definition that's so general that yes, it applies to everybody and doesn't apply to no one. Or if we get so specific, then we start invalidating a bunch of things that actually are still true. If design systems have to be in code, well, so people that just have Figma, do they not have design systems? I'm like, I think they still do. Like that version just doesn't help with these things. But that's also an unsatisfying answer, because a lot of people want like you asked, Hunter, what's the Dan Mall definition of? And I have it, but when I say it, it's like, well, then I just like wiped out 50% of people who have this other kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think to the point though, you're saying that a design system is a lot of things. So let's say it is a file with more than one existing kind of rule or components of how to put something together, right? And so you're saying that definition changes based on the size of the organization and their use case for design. Is that correct?
Yeah, totally. In my cohort design system in 90 days, there's one team that we had in the last cohort that they didn't even have a file. So even that definition is like, they didn't have a file. What they had as a design system was they had a process. It was a 5-step process. It was like, first we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we do this. That was their design system, but they had no assets, no tools that tied to that. So it's like, do they not have a design system? I'm like, I think they do. It just doesn't help them very specifically. Like they don't have something like this, like we're looking at on screen. They don't have that. So they can't do this with it. But what they can do is say, we have a standard, like what Tommy was saying, we have a standard way that we do things. And that's like, I have some slides here, around that, because I was just teaching this, and their process, I'll read it out to you. It's wild. It's like, it's not what you would expect a design system to be. I don't have it up. I will pull it up.
And I was going to ask you about what you're looking at here, Dan.
Uh-huh.
This was an example of what we were talking about before you jumped on, which was I had a team I was on. We had a legacy front end and visual style. Then we had a modern front end, legacy visual style. Then we had a modern front end, modern visual style. And this product had grown so large that by the time they hired me, the first design hire, I had to come in, take inventory. These are screenshots, and we had to be very selective about like, stop using these, continue using these. Here's what we're eventually going to move everything else over to. This looks like ass. Is this a design system?
Totally. Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the question changes, or the answer changes when it's like, is this a good design system? And I think that's where the conversation we had, right? It's like, is this a good one? Well, I don't know about that.
Okay, I want to go with an even spicier one. Hold on, let's see. I want to know. Tell me if this is a design system. I'm going to put some people on Spiral fast.
Ooh, here
you see my screen now? Okay. Is this a design system right here?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. That is, right? Components, we
right?
get a design system. Okay. All right.
Ideally, it would also exist in code, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I get how that is. I also see Dan's point about like the gatekeeping.
Is this a good design system?
Yes.
For a pre-market fit startup, it's perfect.
Yeah. Totally. I think like there's all these public, material design and Polaris and Lightning and like great example, the eBay playbook that just came out, like really good examples, but they all are the same kind of design system. So I think when a lot of teams want to make one or like have the idea for one, they're like, I want one of those, regardless of how applicable it is to them or not. And then when we look at something that doesn't look like that, even just the number of components, I don't know how many material has, like 100 maybe, I'm not sure. So like, does that mean that if you have 3 components, like you just showed, is that like 3% of a design system, or is that 100% of a design system? Like the nuances there get so tricky. Yeah. I would say that is a full, complete design system. I've worked with design teams and design system teams where they feel bad because they only did 12 components this year. They only did 1 a month, at an enterprise scale, and they feel awful about it. And I'm like, whoa, why do we feel awful about that? That's awesome. That's great. And they're like, yeah, but it's not material design. But material design started in 2014. They've been working on that thing for 10 years. They have like I don't know how many people work on it, 50, 60 people full-time working on that thing. So of course, yours is 12. There's no shortcoming in that.
Yeah.
Why do we feel bad about that?
My worry here is that we've hyped up that there would be an absolute annihilation of red here, and we've got too much consensus. Can we get back to the point to where, Dan, you disagree with Red's takes? And can we go by those in as much detail as possible?
Go ahead.
Well, I want to tee up concretely, like what I think my thesis is, and then I want Dan to poke holes in it, basically.
I love it.
Which is that when like a design system has 2 core value propositions, speed and consistency. And as a result of the fact that the only design systems we can actually point to and look at are all publicly available, it's the eBays. It's like, oh my God, a new design system. Cool. That's what a design system looks like. Those, I think, contribute more towards the consistency value proposition. And as a result, the majority of people that when they think of a design system, they think, yeah, that's what we do for consistency, which a pre-product market fit startup doesn't care about consistency. They care about speed. But we dismiss the speed benefits of a very nimble, not connected design system because by definition, we think of design system as something that is like larger, more all-encompassing, more connected. And so it's like many startups think it's like, uncool or not strategic to invest in a design system, where I'm just like, what are you talking about? It's like literally one of the fastest ways to build product when you don't know what you're doing. And the only thing that matters is how quickly you get different iterations and different explorations out the door.
I have a thing that I'm workshopping, a theory that I'm workshopping. So I agree with you that that's the general consensus around design systems, like efficiency, consistency, and then a lot of times innovation is thrown in as the third one, right? So like efficiency, consistency, innovation. The thing that I'm workshopping lately is like, I think that we should take speed off the table. I think we should take efficiency off the table. Because, and again, as Hunter was saying, the folks that I generally talk to and work with are like big enterprises. I work less with startups than with, big enterprises. And design system work is super duper slow, especially at first. It slows you down big time before you get fast. And a lot of times those teams, they don't net positive. They net negative still in a year, 2 years, 3 years, right? And what happens is before they net positive, they get defunded, or they get disbanded, or they get because they just don't get to speed fast enough, right? Ironically, because they've invested in systems. So to me, I'm like, I think that we're not delivering on that promise, or we're not able to deliver on that promise. And in the simplest version of it is if we were to open up Figma right now and race, like Rid, you and me, we're going to race. You're better at Figma than I am. You teach Figma Academy. I'm I'm okay at Figma. But if we were to race as to who could create an interface with a button, and I just drew a rectangle and text on it, and you started working on a design system, I'd be faster than you. So already in that way, I could get to market faster than you if you were working on a design system.
But I would just Shift-I insert my button. It's already
you have to have the button already, right?
But I guess my point is that the at the smallest level, the level of investment required to create a design system that is optimized for a startup is not that much. And I'm talking about in code too. Like for Maven, we went a single afternoon in an offsite. I just sat down with the engineers and we just went through all of the, just me and one other person. We just went through, all right, what are the components that we need? What are the properties that we need? And how should those properties exist across these different types of core components? And we just made them in 3 hours. And then we used them for 2 years and they were super beneficial. And I'm like, why would you wait to do that? It's so obvious too. Believe it or not, they were 40 and 48 pixels tall were the core components. It's shocking. Well, I don't know. I just don't understand why anybody would wait to do that, because then it is I'm just Shift-I button. See ya.
Totally.
It's in there.
I want to pause 1 second. I know that since this is Tommy and I's first time having guests, and I've noticed that we've done a horrible job of keeping up with people that are commenting on the video. We run through and respond to these real quick. So need some resources on enterprise UX, mostly focus on B2B rather than B2C. Dan, do you have any takes on really good enterprise UX resources for designers?
Not off the top of my head, because there's not a lot.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
There aren't. A lot of them are around for practitioners and for consumers, right, on the B2C side, because a lot of them deal with the tooling, Figma, React, things like that. Enterprise, what's important to enterprise design systems is not that stuff. Right, it's about culture. It's about production. It's about how things work. So honestly, this is an awful take, awful answer. The best answer I can give you is buy my book, because it talks about that. I feel terrible saying that, but that's the only plug that I've got so far. I'll think more on that, but yeah, I don't have any off the top of my head.
Yep. I want to talk about something real quick while we're here. And I want to get spicy if we will allow it. Okay. There's 2 things I want to talk about. And you're about to see, and then let me kind of explain why I'm sharing what I'm sharing. So I want to talk about this. Okay. I had to Google it. I found it. I want to talk about this real quick. I want to get Dan's take on this. And before you share, Dan, can I paint a picture real quick?
Please.
I don't know this person. We're not going to talk about him themselves. But what I want to talk about is this concept of like, you know, design systems or designers that kind of live and breathe in the enterprise versus these guys that are like, quote unquote, like design influencer hot shots out here, just like making pretty shit. And the funny thing that happens for me, and I'm sure everybody here knows that like I'm going to get bored if we sit here and talk about like how to build design systems in Figma. Like that's not where I thrive. But if we sit here and we start talking about like, how much do you charge for implementing a design system with inside the enterprise, right? That's where I get excited.
Oh, I love that conversation. Yeah.
Yes. So that's what we're going to do. So from my experience, been there, done that. I know, Dan, I know, you know, but lately the internet is just like run amok with these $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, whatever month subscriptions. And these people that think that they're just crushing it, when quietly behind the scenes, you might look at it and say, you probably work on 200, 300 projects a year to net out at $1 million. If I want to do $1 million in revenue, I might need to only implement half a design system with inside the enterprise across an entire year or two. So Dan, I want to get your take on that. I want to understand the difference for you of like the guys that are like, hey, just draw a rectangle, and then the true like hard practitioners of the craft at scale. And what that looks like when we get into the economics of design.
Yeah, sure. I'll walk back the last like 5 or 6 engagements that I had, design system engagements that I had. And it's a little bit different context. I had an agency for a decade. We did design systems as an agency. I don't have an agency anymore. I'm an independent consultant. So now I work with teams on my own as a consultant. I or my team, we're no longer like designing and building anything on behalf of clients. I'm mostly just consulting with people who already are doing that. So like the context is a little bit different, but that said, yep. Okay. So a couple of engagement, the last year, in the last year, I've done a consulting arrangement with a brand. It was $30K a month. I think $30K a month, something like that. That was the one retainer. With another, it was $20K a month. With another last year, it was a fixed fee. I think it was 6 months for $250K. Going back to now super friendly days when I ran my agency, one big enterprise design system that we did was $1.8 million.
Damn.
Another was 6-week like sprint build, $75K. Another one was with a startup that was a very different way of going about it. We did 11 different, we pushed 11 different features and products with them. That was $978K, something like that. So like, that's the scale that we're talking about.
Yep.
Wow.
See, that excites me because I think that there's almost this arrogance that you see. So it's this interesting thing if we follow it. Like back in the day when all we had was Behance and then we had Dribbble, everything was based around images, right? So like our medium for expressing ourselves or kind of our personalities or our takes on things was all done via images. And then maybe you would comment, but that's how we discover things. And since Tiny fucked Dribbble into the ground, like all we've had now is Twitter, right? And so we went from a bunch of short nerds, as Rid called designers, expressing themselves via images to text. And I don't think it translates very well. Yes, it gets recorded. I don't think it translates very well to text, right? I think that's where it's like, whoa, like a lot of y'all have some bad takes. And it's this interesting thing to where it's shifted to where there's almost this arrogance of people that have built a following or make pretty things, and people tell them that they make pretty things. And suddenly it's like, I'm on top of the world, when it's like, well, actually, like in the game that we're all playing, you're kind of in the minor leagues still. You're getting a lot of attention, but you're in the minor leagues. You're not playing with the big boys for real. You just feel like you are, right? And I think that's such an interesting dichotomy here to think about, like the public praise versus like the behind the scenes sweat that goes into some of this. I don't, what's your all's take on that? Like, how have you guys observed this over the past, 2 years or so that the whole design Twitter is like really kind of flocked to Twitter full time?
Have you read Packy McCormick's Great Online Game?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, everyone listening, all you should just read the article, or there's like audio forms, but it basically describes this, where like we can build careers by playing this big game online, and there are so many different strategies and so many different ways to take it, and you can be an asshole and you can do really well, you can be really collaborative, and it's like that's the way that my brain sees it in every way. It's like, it just feels like every single move. Yes, this fantastic read. There's a chunk about crypto. You can just skip that part. But like every other part of this is really, really interesting. And that's like every single time I open up Twitter, I see a bunch of friends that are all playing a game in career to try to figure out how to win based off of whatever winning looks like to you. And it's like, yes, for someone like, I'll call out Daryl because Daryl knows that I like Daryl. Like, maybe he's not, let's just say he doesn't make $1 million a year from these contracts. I have no idea what he makes. I'm sure he's doing quite well. Daryl has put himself in a position where he has like, he's so leveraged his position in the game that he has endless versatility, and he can do so many different strategies, start so many different things, and effectively do anything that he wants at a high level because he has invested consistently in putting himself out there. And like, yeah, it shows up as followers, but like, it's not really about followers. It's about like distribution for ideas and the ability to just like play on easy mode for whatever that you want to start. And like, he's put himself in that position. So I'm like, you know what? Did he play the game differently than I would play it? For sure. Like, we have very different strategies, but my man's winning.
I want to separate something real quick. Like, I'm sure Daryl's great. I don't know Daryl. But just like using a proxy here is like just the idea of, I guess, let me build a big audience quickly, right? I love this transition because this is the thing. Like, Tommy creates these Notion docs that I'm like, I'm not going to read it. Let's just talk about something else. But like, I think about this a lot because what you're saying, like, I don't agree with it. Actually, I think that
perfect.
If you have enough distribution, yes, you can do a lot of things. But if we're talking about, like, at the end of the day, like being a service business, you can talk about value or you can talk about scale. Right? If we're talking about scale, that means, let's say that I can sell a design project for $5,000 a month, for example. I need to do a lot of those, right? And if I really want to make any money, I got to start hiring to do even more of them. And then my margins hurt. And then at the end of the day, like, I'm netted out playing a game with my audience to where my margins are 10, 15%. So that's scale. And then you have value. Like Dan, for example, said 1.8 million for design system, right? Once you get into the world of, hey, let's talk about value. Let's go in the room with adults that are running big businesses and they require sophisticated process and conversations and really systematic approaches for how you work with them. Whatever game you played to build that audience, it doesn't help you anymore. It's meaningless. They don't care. They don't use Twitter. They're not in that world, right? So I think there is a juxtaposition there between how you think about those things. And I think that the argument to where, like, well, if I have enough audience, I can kind of play whatever game I want on easy mode. It's not actually true. You're really kind of stuck in, well, how did you build that audience? Who's in it? How do they follow you? How do people perceive you? Those things still are actually quite limiting.
I totally agree. That's why it's like not about followers. It is about the cumulative value of the people that follow you, which can be followers can be a good or a poor signal of that.
Yeah.
That being said, like, something that I don't think is happening quite yet, but like where I kind of disagree in return is, like, right now, I'm going to come up with an example. Let's come up with, one of, like, an off-menu designer who doesn't have a lot of followers, tons of skill. And then you have someone like James McDonald from Clerk, who has tons of skill and 70,000 followers or something like that.
Sure.
Right now, James is not commanding a premium for the exact same project when he should. And I think he will. And I think that model will become really, really popular, where more designers with distribution will be doing work in public and generating massive amounts of eyeballs onto a project. And there will be an audience premium that trickles down to the people who are doing the work. I think that we're barely starting to see just a little bit of it. But I think that's like one of the big bets that I am making and believe over the next like 5 years from now is that value will accrue in more interesting ways, and that you're not going to just be bringing your skills to the table, but you're going to be bringing your distribution to the table. It might mean that you can command more money from a project. It might mean that more companies are willing to loop in an equity component. It might mean that you just get a better job opportunity because you bring this brand with you, kind of thing. I don't know, but I don't think that it's nothing. I think that it will become increasingly significant soon.
I totally think it's something, right? And I agree with you that there is a premium to be charged there, but I guess like this is kind of a different debate that we don't need to get into now of like, you know, what is the most valuable. But at the end of the day, like the companies with the biggest budgets, they're going to opt to pay for security. I just tweeted stuff about this the other day. They're going to opt to pay for security. Like if you're a lone designer with 100,000 followers and you're talented as all hell, it just doesn't matter to them, right? And that's where really like the biggest budgets lay. So the people that perceive, oh, I would actually be willing to pay a premium for the distribution that comes with this, are still going to be living in that land of the smaller budgets. Whereas the bigger budgets, the people that Dan's working with, for example, you know, their marketing budgets are into the tens, if not hundreds of millions a year. So, you know, the little lift of our designer has some followers isn't as meaningful.
I think, so I want to jump in because there's a couple of like things happening here. And I want to say, I've always been very heavy on this idea that distribution has been undervalued for a long time. Mm-hmm. I do think the pendulum is swinging and it's starting to become a little overvalued, and not so much that it's overvalued, but I think that people overcomplicate the idea. The idea of distribution is not new. What's new is just how the barrier to entry for anybody, and that's even getting higher just due to pure saturation, right? But the fact that we used to have to go to billboards or through commercial slots and all these kind of gate kept Google pay-per-click, or even just SEO, the black box that's been. And I got started in marketing really early when you could still game SEO a lot easier. And there were a whole bunch of mechanics around that you could do. And we would do like local pool cleaning websites and do lead gen around that. But now with social media, you can just build brands up and you can create these distribution networks. And you know, even that's changed a little bit. The one thing I was sharing, like when I was doing development work for our startup Stream Pro, I didn't know how to get this anywhere. I wasn't some genius on how to use social media or Reddit at the time. This was 10 years ago. And we would just go to the Twitch subreddits or Counter-Strike certain popular games, and we would just be able to post, hey, we're building a thing and we want feedback. And we grew to 100K concurrence within a few months doing this. Well, you can't play the Reddit game the same anymore, because if you do this, mods are pretty strict. They're going to can that. This has become a blueprint that's just used over and over. Then it become, well, build in public on Twitter. And like that became a thing. And so like you saw, even when you think about service-based businesses, and this is one I can't speak to, but service-based businesses started doing a lot of this. And you see it with like Brett from Design Joy. I mean, he pulls a ton of that. I don't know how repeatable at scale that is, because at some point people get tired. Like there's only so many Justin Welshes that are going to be successful talking about what Justin Welsh is talking about before it's no longer new and novel. So like
you hop on LinkedIn, man.
there's a shelf life to the distribution, but at the end of the day, it's still just distribution. There are levers to pull. It is the great internet game. And if you have built your audience and you have some understanding of it, I do think that you have a significant advantage. And so I over-index now going into next year. And it's funny because a lot of the people that I talk to on a regular basis that are following me or take my courses or talk with me and have questions are people working a 9-to-5 as a designer. And I find myself starting to relate less and less with those people, because I'm somebody who is doing the design work. And then I'm going over and I'm going to develop it. And then I'm doing the marketing. And there's a number of things that I'm very much kind of an independent builder. And there are some elements of that are like really unrelatable to people. And it does make the just draw a rectangle bro thing resonate a little bit with me. But having a background in enterprise, I understand that that's like it's just a different world. But I do think there are people who say just draw a rectangle, bro, and it's levels IO. And it's like, yeah, well, he's killing it. And then there are people who say just draw a rectangle, bro, and they haven't come over that like Dunning-Kruger curve yet, and they don't actually understand what they're saying.
I think one of the things that's tough about talking about money is that money's relative. Right. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says like, oh, that's a low budget. Well, low compared to what, though? Because when Dan Mall Designer was starting out as a freelancer, like a $5,000 gig was like the world, you know, and until it's not. Right. So it's relative in what we talk about. And when we talk about people like building in public and especially designers building in public, a lot of them are building products in public. I think that's one like common term. A lot of them are just building their career in public. And that's cool, too. You know, so I'm of two minds about it, and it really is relative to people's careers and where they are and what they want to make and all that. Like, I remember as a designer, like growing as a designer. You know, I grew up in North Philly. You know, I'm a brown kid from North Philly, right? So like my parents are immigrants, and so for me to get a job that was like $58,000, like was amazing. It was incredible. You know, right out of college too. Like that was my first job as a designer, $58,000 a year. You know, and then like get on to be an art director and, you know, making $90,000 a year. I'm like, I'm a millionaire. Like I might as well be a millionaire now. And that was fine until it wasn't, you know? And so I think that like a lot of the times when we talk about money and design and business, a lot of it is relative to what we're actually doing. And one of the things that I discovered in my career was that at some point, design is not enough. If you want to break through a particular ceiling, design is not enough. It gets you there. But then you've got to know more about whatever business or product or distribution or audience or any of those things. And I'm curious about your guys' take on this, because one of the things I'm coming around to that is tough emotionally and psychologically to deal with is I'm like, I don't know if design matters. Like, and which is weird as a designer. It's like,
dude, yes.
How much does design matter?
Get me juiced up, man.
Yes. There we go. So it's interesting, Dan, because like that goes back to my comments about the arrogance of this, right? Like the money side of design, and designers are so fucking sensitive about it, but it is relative, right? What's a lot to somebody might be not very meaningful to somebody else. And so when you see this like level of arrogance applied to that, of like, you know, the MRR brag, or like, you know, oh, I'm crushing it with my thing over here, just draw a rectangle, bro. Like whenever you see this level of arrogance and this lack of humility that comes with that, it's like, well, you don't really know like who you're poking, because things are relative at the end of the day. But you take that out of it, it's just like, well, why even fucking bother? Like, why not just support other designers, right? Like, why not celebrate the path that everybody else is on, regardless of kind of where they're at in their journey, and just like take the arrogance out of it? But it seems like, again, designers being short nerds and trying to communicate with words, we're just not doing a good job with it some of the time. Back to Tommy and I's whole design tea episode from our first our conversation from our first episode. Like, it is kind of this recurring theme, and I don't understand it. But yeah, I'm curious, like, how do you guys think that the design community as a whole should approach discussions around helping each other, whether it's with pricing for projects, or helping each other build distribution or build audience, or understand like, hey, I'm at this journey right now to where I'm doing a lot of projects that are like lower value and I don't love them, but I feel like my skill sets are good. How do I like crack into some enterprise stuff? Like, to me, that's where a lot of this conversation should be, and it's just not. Like, how do you guys think about making that shift for the community?
Okay, hold on. Damn you, Hunter. First, Joseph, yeah, the gang grew. We're hanging out with some friends today.
Shit.
Second, how do you just cruise by what Dan left us with? Does design matter? How do you?
I'm not. We're gonna get there.
I want to get to what you're asking about, like adding value to the community, bringing designers up versus tearing it down, and I think that's an important conversation. But I'm gonna jump first right into, does design matter? And I just want to show you guys something as we talk about this. Okay, because I think this is kind of an interesting way to illustrate this. All right, so I've got 3 of the coding LLMs brought up, and I have a prompt that I'm gonna pop in. We're gonna let this generate while we talk about this, okay? And I want to show you. So I've got Vercel's V0, I've got Bolt New, and I've got Sourcebook. There's a number of other really good ones. All right. So we're going to like let these just kind of do their thing. You're going to see this. Now, does design matter? And here's my opinion on it, and I want your takes. I do think design matters. I think it has a lot of value. I think every single designer, or probably a very, very high percentage of us, overvalue design most of the time. I don't think design matters nearly as much as we think it does. And I think it's very nuanced. I think that's a very hard conversation. But I think the work necessary to create meaningful design, or meaningful enough design, is probably being overinvested into, and will probably continue to be like, we'll probably invest too many resources in it over time. Well, this pooped out on us, didn't it? So here, let's look at like, just I want some context. So like this was generated in Bolt, right? This was generated just now. These work in, this is Sourcebook. Here's V0. They have a runtime error. Let's fix that. Have you guys played with any of these?
Yeah. It's
Not
super
Sourcebook yet.
Can we clarify one thing? If we're going to jump into this topic now, because I wanted to segue, but we'll get into it. Dan, when you say does design matter, can I ask you a clarifying question?
Sure.
Are you asking, does the visual aesthetic, the way something looks and feels, matter, or does the practice of being a designer matter today? Is it, which one is it?
I think ultimately both, but more the first one, at least as the entry point. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, does visual design, art direction, typography, color, like the craft of a graphic design, UI design, like I think that's the entry point. And then, larger than that, then like, okay, so then what about the practice of design, and what does that mean, and what does that encompass? Next.
I want to hear Rid's hot take on this.
I have so many. I'm like trying to pick through. I mean, the fact is, like, we were watching those two things generate, and like they looked pretty similar. And I think that actually is the picture of where we're headed. I think the baseline for the vast majority of products is that we are moving towards a more homogenous world. And everyone throws up their hands, and it's like, well, what? Like, like, I hate that, But like, if you really actually break it down, like, is it bad? Is it actually bad if more of our products look homogenous? They all look and feel the same. I think it's kind of hard to make an argument against that, actually, and it's just designers, having their fingers pried off of the craft a little bit. And don't get me wrong, like, this is coming from someone like, I love pixels. I love sweating the details on completely meaningless inner shadows. Like, I get it. Like, I'm not coming to you as like a PM, like, I freaking love this stuff. And I still believe that it's pointless to fight this trend towards a more homogenous world. And I think that we will have a much more componentized world where, like, right now we think of like, oh, there's so many UI kits. I think there will be 100 times as many components available to us moving forward. I think they're going to be built directly into our tools, and we're going to be able to spin up things much more quickly, and they might all look and feel roughly the same. And I think that is okay, with two related points. One, I do actually buy the narrative of like, you still got to make something that's like, that matters in the market. You still have to make something that matters in the market. And I think that designers are as well equipped to succeed on that axis as anybody else. And so I'm personally grateful to have design as a core skill set moving into a world where it's just so much easier for anyone to build our ideas. I think we're going to have way more software in the world, way more companies, way more niche applications. And I'm like really grateful to be a designer there. There's also, maybe I'll just stop there, actually, to start.
Well, I actually want to goad you into continuing, Rid, if you don't mind, because
Rid, you're on the verge of a hot take. Let's
totally
get
there. Like, to me, to be fair, does design matter is a leading question. I also believe that it matters, but the question that I really want to get at is like, so where does it matter?
Okay.
Like, so yeah, it feels like you were getting there.
Okay, so where does it matter? I think this is where it helps to kind of separate design, and you did a good job thinking about it. It's like the design is a practice, design is a craft. Now, I do think craft will still matter. I think it is more specific use cases where you are attacking like an incumbent with a dominant market share, but a really low NPS. And if you just freaking care a little bit and build almost the same thing in a slightly opinionated way, you can win. the whole like linear versus Jira thing, I think, and even like Arc versus Chrome in some ways, like I think that model, you could run similar playbooks in many ways, is in more niche use cases too, because as the cost of software goes down, you can have a smaller business that is equally high ROI without having to raise any capital, and it might just be you and a friend. Great. Find something and just make it a little bit better. And I think craft can be a differentiator there. But I think craft as a competitive advantage might be a little bit more slim in the future. And in that case, where design matters is slightly higher level. And it's the ability to like deeply understand a set of pain points and market opportunities, and to be able to craft a product positioning and put a story out into the world that gets people excited to adopt and use what you have made.
Yeah, I love that. Can we imagine? I want to go back to this thread of distribution for designers real quick. I personally believe that we're going to enter this really interesting future to where it doesn't look too different from today. It's just a little bit more varied, I'd say, to where today I'd argue that the vast majority of the software that 99% of people use is the same, right? Like how many billion people use Facebook or Meta products every day, for example, right? Like a small number of corporations control the products that 99% of people use. And then when we look into that 1%, we have us little freaks that are, talking about Arc and Raycast and like all these fun little tools that we love, and they get some traction and whatever, but they never really go mainstream, right? I think that what's going to happen very, very soon is we continue to explore these micro tools, right? Red, kind of like you mentioned, let's say you have something that has a really high adoption but a really low NPS, and somebody just sits around, they're like, you know what, Jira sucks, linear is just a little too complicated for me, I really want to make this one thing that like kind of blends the best of both worlds, but just solves this one use case. So I'm going to use AI. I'm going to design it over the weekend. I'm going to have AI build it. I'm going to ship it. Right? Boom. There we go. And let's say that I have enough distribution, right, to get 1,000 people to use it or 2,000 people to use it, whatever it might be. We do have that at scale. We mentioned levels earlier, like these indie hackers. My question is, what happens when all the people that previously were just sharing like, hey, here's this cool little like logo concept or this little, jitter animation I made or whatever. What happens when those people are sharing software, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, do we have now 2, 3, 4, 5% of the population using these little one-off tools because it fits their specific little need, right? And if so, why do they adopt it? And I would argue in that case, it's probably because of the design, the experience of using that one thing to solve that one specific problem. And to me, design matters a lot in that world. I don't know. What's your all's take on how that's going to evolve?
What happens if it gets some level of success? It pops off on Twitter over the weekend, and the next week, a different indie hacker just reverse engineers it and launches the exact same thing.
Oh, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen endlessly over and over and over again. So how much is design actually the differentiator there? Maybe an element of that, I agree, but I think actually it's more about brand and distribution and being able to tell a story around the software.
Can I jump in?
Which is design. That's design, though, right? Like brand distribution, the story that you tell, that is all a form of design. It's not UI, it's not UX, but it's design.
Okay, I agree from that standpoint. The way that we were talking about, oh God, this is another one of those generic words that can mean absolutely anything.
Yeah. What is design?
Yeah.
Can I jump in? I just want to say I think there's two groups of thought, right? Group one says that let's standardize and make design at scale, or let's make it easier to produce design at scale, raising the floor of bad design. And then there's group two that says like, let's break the rules. Let's get really creative, elevating the ceiling of good design. And I think both are necessary. But I think when you talk about what makes a product successful, it's critical mass, and critical mass of adoption of users, critical mass of solving the problem just enough, critical mass of reducing suffering, right? Like those are all the things. So there's a critical mass in everything, and like figuring out where that is I think the job of the design. I love that there's a group two. A group two, in my opinion, is not necessary, but I love it. And to your point about the small tools, right? I pulled up this report because I thought it was great. Jason Fried breaks down a really terribly designed site and says this is why it's one of the best designed sites on the web. But to your point about tools, real quick, like Rid and I are working on a Black Friday combination for our courses, and I'm putting together like in one day a small landing page for this thing. So here's Rid's big dome, and I love tools like Unicorn Studio that make WebGL and
Unicorn's sick.
It's so sick, and I'm still just playing with it. I don't have, but like the way that I can just do like random things, like I can just bop this stuff over here, and you can think like I've got some sort of hero image over here, and maybe here's like, I don't know how to grab all layers at once. That doesn't do it. But my point is like, you've got like this. You could start to see a hero section, and then this weird object on the left, and then maybe mine on the right. And you hover over it, and when you do so, you like start to see some animation come into place, and it's like Rid's dome or something. I don't know, right? But the fact is, to start playing with things like these and to export this over and get it in production will take me 20 minutes. And that's really cool. That starts to elevate little things. I don't know if you guys have seen Tom Johnson. I love what he's doing with like dithering, for example.
Yeah.
He's doing like these dither portraits. I want to give a shout out. So I'm actually having Tom do both of our avatars in dithering in his like little style that he does here, which is just neat. I think it's cool. But he also does all of these things. And so this is one way where, are these necessary elements to include in an interface? You don't need them to reach critical mass. Like you don't need these parts in a to make your product reach the number of users you want. Let me find like one of his examples in here of how he's doing this inside an actual interface. Man, he puts out so much great stuff. I love this. Like here's an example, and like that's sick. Like that's cool. How do I play this? It's not necessary for critical mass, but it like creates this differentiation that I really dig. Now this is purely aesthetic. Like this isn't really the UX that we're talking about that I think matters. I do want to give a quick shout out to him though. For anyone looking to do like this dithered stuff, he got motivated and started ditherface.com. So he's like actually doing this as a service. These are dope. You guys should go check them out. But all this to say, I think that the two groups exist. I think group 2 is very helpful. And once group 2 kind of does the pioneering, and then group 1 kind of gets ahead and starts to standardize a tool around making group 2's explorations easy for group 1 to reinvent. Like that's what I get excited about. But group 2 is not necessary. I think group 1 is where the real impact is being made, raising the floor of bad design.
I want to keep pushing on that. What's the impact?
The impact to me there, because the internet was the great equalizer across the world, right? Now, different regions in the world can participate in this marketplace. They can create competitive products that look like something that was created typically with only resources you may have only had in Silicon Valley. And that's huge. That raises the earning potential in those third world countries. That makes products in different regions capable to compete at scale. And when you have products, especially like productivity tools that help businesses in their local regions, now those products increase the earning potential of the local populace in those regions. It's just this long lasting effect. So when you increase the floor of bad design, I truly believe that does nothing but it reduces suffering across the world.
I don't disagree, but I'm trying to make you say it because I don't actually know but like what is the thing that's raising the floor? The dither effect? Like does that mean like what should the junior designer take away from this to go, okay, so if I do dithering, then I'm raising the floor and increasing earning potential? Like what is the thing that they can work on that we can work on that is doing that floor raising?
That sometimes it's okay for something to be good enough, and over-indexing on craft is a bad idea.
Why are we always trying to pander to junior designers?
Ooh.
Dan just said, what is a junior designer taking away from this? Why isn't it just any designer or anybody? Why do we always try and pander to junior designers or assume that conversations we're having is for somewhat stupid people only would be useful for junior designers?
That's a good question. My gut take on that. Yeah, it's fair. My gut take is a couple things. One is that like, isn't that what we all were at some point? So like, it's like a butterfly effect thing. Like if we get the right seeds planted in us, we grow into something, and if we don't, then we don't. And so, like, maybe this is too nihilistic or something, but like to some extent, if we're all grown, we're done. You know, like we've grown to the left too far, and you know, it's hard to fix that. But for junior designers, you can plant those seeds and you can water them. You know, and not even junior design, but for junior people, you can plant the seeds and you can water them, and they can grow into something. Like one of the things I've always thought about my career is I'm not going to be the one who creates some product that changes the world. But I could probably teach someone the skills that it would take for them and water that so that they become the people who create the product that change the world. So I think that's why it's important for the junior folks.
That's so interesting. Can
I just insert one? I'm going to insert one thing, and it's not going to
in.
distract, and then you just go. I just want to say there's also a dialogue that happens all the time. It's like, why is the design community so like, you know, hateful, and we always knocking each other down and everything? And I'm like, part of me is like, what design community are you in? Like, I feel like I so rarely see that. I see someone being helpful 10 times for every like one weird tweet. I'm like, I don't know. I walk around so grateful that the design community is so cool. And a lot of it is because of people like Dan. So I'm just like, that is going back to the thing that you were asking a few times ago. Now we can move on conversationally. Design community is awesome.
Okay. So two things. One, agree and agree, right? So agree with both of you guys. I do think that the vast majority of the time, the design community is doing like really interesting things, but then because it's the internet and like negativity bias happens, like it seems that things get the most exposure are the things that are negative, unfortunately. And then, you know, suddenly it's all anybody's talking about for the next few days. And it's this very cyclical thing. And I personally am just tired of it. Right. But that's a different conversation, different time. I think there's something interesting here to where Rid, you have a course, you're a teacher. Tommy, you have a course, you're a teacher. Dan, I don't think you do. You might have a course. You definitely have a book. You're a teacher.
He's the teacher.
I'm not. I'm too dumb to teach. And so all three of you guys have some probably latent subconscious bias where it's like, I want my knowledge to influence others. Right. And so I love that focus on like the juniors. That's really interesting to me. But like, I just want to say, as an outsider, rather than thinking that everything always applies to junior designers, I would say that all three of you do a tremendous amount of education and growth that helps designers of every stage of, seniority.
I specifically created a course. And I tell junior designers it's not for you because it's not really I don't think like a junior designer has a very different set of challenges and problems.
Yeah. There's also a plethora of options for junior designers too.
Yeah.
Fact is, like everyone,
how many good ones?
Well, I
think it's a good call out that like for me, what it's making me think is like I think everything we're talking about is applicable to junior designers, but also applicable to anybody who wants to learn more about design. That could be at senior level, at executive level, a new level, so good call out on that. Part of the seed planting here is like, if people like us who have been in the field for a long time and practicing for a long time can't even articulate it well, how much more of other folks, regardless of junior or senior? And that is one of the struggles. I love that Dee's saying in the chat, like, as a junior designer, the only thing I think about is how to become senior. I work with a ton of senior designers who are not very senior, who cannot articulate what they do, right? And part of it is like, when they hear the language that people like us are talking about, a lot of the language, Tommy, even though in what you were talking about, a lot of what we tend to talk about, it's like what is cool and what is interesting. And like, those are all super duper subjective, and they don't play in a boardroom. They don't play in a client pitch. They don't play in a proposal. They don't play in like, so like we have to model this stuff. Not just for juniors, like good call out, Hunter, for people who are like, but give me the language. I'm a basketball fan, and I read you are as well. I don't know about the two, but one thing I love about LeBron James and JJ Redick's podcast, I forget what it's called. Shoot, do you guys know the podcast?
I've seen it, but I don't remember.
They literally break down the X's and O's. Like they're on a clipboard drawing, and they're talking about the words and the play. Oh, this is called a flare screen. I played basketball my whole life. I've never heard of a flare screen before, but hearing NBA players say this is a flare, I'm like, okay, that's cool, because they're giving me the language for it, and they're going to a level of depth that normally we don't go to. Normally, basketball talk is like show heart and accountability and like go get them. It's like that's not instruction, that's not direction. But like set a flare screen, then the man goes outside this way, this other man goes this way, the pass feeds in here, and then you got an easy lay. Okay, now we're talking about some details. So like, what's the equivalent of that for us? You know, what is it that people like? Do I use the Photoshop dither filter? Do I build a Figma dither plugin? Is it not about dithering at all? You know, what is the thing that I can do that is applicable when what's my version of dithering? You know, how do I do that thing?
I'm going to leave that there. Hunter, let's jump into some roasts, man.
Are we roasting?
I think we're roasting time. And I think we got two folks. Ooh, we got a hot kitchen in here, I think, for these roasts.
Let's do it.
We like to do a few we get submissions.
Lots of them.
Portfolios, different designs we like to walk through.
Yep. Let's pull up our roast. Or you want to pull up the thread and we can pick one?
Is it the same one that you had previously?
Yeah, I think it's the one that you had me text you the other day. And while we do, Dan and Red, thank you guys for bouncing around 1,000 different directions with us. Because I frankly I have no idea what the hell we just talked about, but I'm excited about all of it. And
for all the viewers, by the way, 1,000 have tuned in at this time. Come to find out that is not a live counter. But what I do know is that we've had a lot of people tuning in, watching us. I don't know why, but we appreciate it. This will never get that much more organized. So just if you were hoping that would happen, I'm sorry.
I think it's good because we've been live now for what, maybe an hour and 40 minutes. Red, how many podcasts do you put out on Deep Dive that do 1,000 views within the first like hour and a half?
It's going like this. So that's actually right about
okay,
there.
Cool. So then we're doing pretty
this
good.
Is pretty nuts, to be honest. Like, to get this many people that quickly is, I was very surprised by the second episode, seeing you already had like 900 or whatever.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that people need a little blow off steam on Fridays, and they're like, I just want to hear.
It's the perfect timing. Yeah.
A couple idiots say silly things, you know. Okay, so this is from the one the other week. How about this one right here?
This one here?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Can we get some hot takes from Red, the teacher, the Figma Academy man?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of like, let's just hero section text right away. So you like squint and like, they're very intentionally, whoa, that's crazy. Very intentionally using color contrast to like draw my attention to things. But I think the back and forth between the gray and the white multiple times makes it so like it's a little bit chaotic right out of the gate, where I don't actually read anything in order. And so I effectively read nothing. The one thing that I do really like though is the pyramid. Like I think like being able to like zoom out and see like the general shapes on a site and how it's kind of like anchored in that top triangle that sits above the cards is very cool.
Yeah. I'm worried because
this is the time. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was wondering what this was.
Yeah. I could drive a double-decker bus between those fucking lines. It's a little excessive. I might tighten that up a little bit.
These are just stills. There's no interaction here. What's
going
on
there?
GIFs.
There's GIFs. Look.
Oh, they are okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I think it should be bigger.
Grid.
My biggest concern here is there's no cohesion between any of this work. Like, a lot of that work doesn't even look like it was done by the same designer, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but maybe it's just like the way it's presented that makes it feel a little sporadic. Please, everyone that has these, please just, if you're not seeing meaningful results of people literally coming here and like, well, first, let me say this. If you're going to have a pricing CTA on your site, and as a designer or any service person, you're going to say, this is my price for this thing. Please, please, please track the analytics behind these buttons very, very carefully. And if you're seeing that people aren't interacting with these, just remove them.
What do you? I know you have a lot of thoughts on these like pricing things, Dan. What do you think about like listing fixed rate prices on your page?
Can I soapbox for a minute, even though it's a roast?
Please, dude, go ahead.
All right, I'll try to keep it short. Every time I teach pricing, I always teach positioning first, because you can't command high prices without having a good position. And so to me, I'm like, yeah, there's some problems with the pricing, I think, but before that, even can you scroll to the top?
Like the very top?
Very top. Like the value proposition isn't there for me, so I'm not going to pay any price.
Yeah,
I'm Erdal, UX UI brand designer, simplicity. I think that the graphic design, the UI design is like cool. There's things I like, things I don't like. I'll talk about that in a minute. But like, you haven't given me a reason to book a call with you. Like there's no alignment. And I'll go back to our previous discussion for a minute to say, like, for me, where design matters is it helps you align with the right people and then not align with the wrong people. Like it shoos them away very, very quickly. Good design. If you don't like purple, well, the site's not for you. Because the site has purple on it. So there's no alignment here to me in the top. You're a UX UI brand designer. Great. That's about you. What does it have to do with me? Simplicity, sophistication. That's not like, I'm not like, yes, I love some simplicity and sophistication.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I've been looking for
How'd
this
you
my
know?
whole life. Right. So like what aligns with me so that I go, oh, I like this, this resonates with me. I am now willing to pay X amount of dollars for some service because this person is my kind of person that I think I could work well with. So like, there's nothing to say who the right customer is, who the wrong customer is. It just says like, here I am. Do you want it or not? And I think that's the problem with most portfolios, not just this one. So to me, when I get to the pricing, I'm like, I don't even know if I'm the right person. So I'm not even going to look at any price, regardless of if it was 1,500, 15,000, 150, And so I think that to me, the big improvement is like, tell me who you want to be booking. Like, call me out on the website. Say my name somehow. Say like I am a designer for new startups in education. Like, okay, cool. Now I might be willing to pay $1,500 because I run a new startup in education. And so I think that like to me, all of it blurs together because I don't know that it's for me yet. Even by the time I get to the pricing.
I love that. Can we guys play a game real quick? Actually, thinking of this, the other day I told Tommy because he was asking about branding. He's like, "Oh, when are we going to figure out branding for this show?" And I was like, "What would be hilarious? We should just have my design team on the show, and we should just design the brand live, and do like a live session to design the brand for the show, live crit, all this stuff." And I think that'd be really fun. So we will do that. So Patrick, if you guys are here, get prepared. It's going to happen maybe before the end of the year.
I love it.
But we, I want to talk about, we're going to do a roast. I have an idea. Do you guys want to roast the new temporary off menu site before it gets launched?
Hell yeah. And your team leaked it. Your team leaked it on Twitter.
They did?
Ooh,
they leaked that it was coming, I think. Real quick, Erdal, get rid of this clock, please.
Yes, please get rid of the clock. But we appreciate that you're in Croatia.
And we love you.
Patrick said Jesus.
Oh yeah, for the being live. Hey, and Framer, by the way, Framer had a flag posted up on the Salesforce tower.
I thought it was AI for the first like.
I thought so too.
but it's real though.
Is it?
I'm not actually sure I still believe it.
Wait. I saw everyone retweeting it. I mean, like
I think Andy.
If enough people retweet it, then it's true.
I think Andy is really good at those videos, so I'm not convinced that that's a real one yet.
Man.
Okay, so
let's do it.
All right, so I'm just gonna preface this real quick before we do it. The only preface that I'll have is that I got to do a real quick preface, otherwise I'll get yelled at. I'm just gonna say this real fast, okay? No pressure. This is one of the interesting things about running an agency, and Dan, I know that you'll know this pain like really, really well. It's like, hey, okay, we're gonna intentionally not take on projects starting in like, let's say mid-November through the end of the year. That way we buy ourselves some time to work on our own site. And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, but like I really kind of want to take that project on. That one sounds really cool. And all of a sudden you're like, fuck, we did it again. Like we screwed ourselves. So that's what happened. So we're having to buy more time to work on the sick new off menu site. And I was like, guys, let's just get something out there. Cause like if I see a like fixed price point on our site for another fucking day, I'm literally gonna lose my mind. So we're coming out with this thing really quickly. It's already built actually. I'm just not gonna share that link just yet because I'm finished. But let's roast the site. And so my only preface here is that this isn't the actual copy. With the whole baby and everything, I haven't gone in and actually written the copy. So before you guys are like storytelling, positioning, whatever, like I hear you and I want your suggestions, but just know that like we haven't done it. That's all. That's my only preface. This is it. This is the site. I'll take you through the experience real fast. So it's a wheel. There is no scroll. The only thing that happens when you scroll is that the wheel turns and you can view lots of work. You have this cool little slider down here of logos. This is copy right here. I did write this copy. I like this copy. I'm going to leave it there. That'll pull up this with all these like client logos and stuff like that. And that's about it. It literally is just this giant wheel of all kinds of fun case studies that spends when you scroll it and then like locks into position. And I love it. I think it's the coolest, like simple one-page site. Rip it apart. Let's roast it. Let's go.
I get the concept now. So that giant wheel is like the zoomed out, but that's the wheel on the right there. And that's just basically, as you scroll up and down, that wheel's just moving each piece of work into focus, right?
That's right. Yep.
Can I ask a question first? If you
away.
had come up with this concept when you were first launching Off Menu, would you have still thought it was just as good?
I don't understand the question.
Is there an element to this design that works because you feel like you have enough weightiness in the market now? Because like to me, my initial reaction was like, oh, this reminds me kind of like the new MetaLab site. It's no site.
I haven't seen it.
You know,
okay.
It's really good, but it only works because it's MetaLab and they have good recognizable companies behind it. And so like there's a status of this. But I'm wondering, like, do you have to get to a point where you feel like, yeah, now we can have this type of site?
I think the answer to your question is yes, right? I think you do have to get the point, right? So yeah, I mean, I think to Dan's point about positioning, like that hits home so hard. I think the greatest, or even going back to the question of like, does design matter, right? I think if you don't have really clear positioning and value prop in your brand as a service business, it doesn't matter how great your site is, it goes out the window. So if you flash back to 2019, we launched for our agency Everest, we launched a new site in January. We won Site of the Month. So every fucking award that you can think of, right? Site of the Month. It converted 0 customers in that one site. And we would have people that are like, hey, like we know you guys, we want to work with you guys, but like we don't really understand what you do from your site, because we had optimized the whole site to say, let's win Site of the Month. That was our goal. We achieved our goal, but like we alienated a lot of the customer base that we were after. And so positioning and understanding value props and who you're targeting, that's everything. And so I think we're at the point in our journey now to where I feel like I could literally just say Off Menu, here's like a little couple pieces of work and like, here's our minimum price, book a call, and people will still call us. Right. But that's earned status over time by reputation and just delivering results over and over and over again. Will the full site be that way? No. But I do think that's a fantastic question, Red. That's so good. And I think so many people fuck that up.
You know, it would be just an interesting idea for that wheel scroll is underneath each of these. Because is there any additional interactivity that happens like on hover, on click of those? Or is it just like, this is a piece of work?
There's a little magic if you hover and if you click. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, because, you know, I'm big on social proof and I think it would be really clean to have like the avatar of the person you worked with and like a small testimonial right next to them, right underneath each piece of work. And like, I think that would just be such an elevatory little banger for each one.
That's it. That's a great call. Can I ask you a question? How do you guys perceive logo walls? Do you perceive them as social proof?
I'm kind of blind to them, to be honest.
I agree. That's why we hit it.
Yeah. I'm blind to them unless there's a quote attached to it.
Ooh, that's such a good call out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we hid them down here. So this is actually an Easter egg to where like if you hover over it, it'll say view all and you can look at them. But they're kind of
That's kind of cool. That's kind of fun.
It is a fun little interaction. Yeah.
I guess it's just specifically with agencies, same thing for courses actually. Where it's like it's the equivalent of being like, these are the people who took my course. And it's like one guy from Nike that was like, like 3 years ago. And it's like a giant Nike logo on the bottom. Like I kind of assume for a lot of agencies that it's like how many agencies have Google or Facebook on them? It's like, like I feel like half the agencies have a Facebook logo on it because they've all been subcontracted out.
Or they'll just straight up lie about it.
Or they will just straight up lie about it.
Yeah. I also just quickly want to call out like both Dan, Super Friendly was your agency's name. Off Menu, such a sick name. The first time I ever tried to represent myself as an agency with like, which was just me early in my career, I named it Turbo Fish. So I just want to call out, you guys have such great agency names.
Well, dude, there is Razorfish. That's a big, Leapfrog. Like there are some things out there that are like that. Yeah. But then you have the absolute ballers, like huge, basic instrument. Like those are like awesome. Like how do you brand that? All right, that's there was the off menu roast. You guys didn't get as spicy with the roast as I was.
Okay, but here's because I have like questions. I'm gonna say one more thing.
I was
Whenever
about to say too. I want to say what after you.
Okay, whenever I come to a website like that, I feel like you're making me do all the work.
Ooh,
you know, where I'm like, but I hate case studies. You're telling me there's nothing I can do except for like look at a case study, and that's where I have to get sold. And it frustrates me, but also part of me is just like, maybe that's the best way to do it. You know, I really don't know. I've never made an agency site with a bunch of underlying analytics to figure it out and test different versions. But I'm like, I just don't want to read your case study. I am very interested in sites that sell me by like weaving a collective narrative across the body of work rather than making the whole journey like, hey, look at body of work A, then look at body of work B, then look at body of work C. That's tiresome to me.
Here's my roast. I think that you don't know what your site is yet. It doesn't look like you know what the site is for. It looks like a site that, like, you know, we're an agency site, so we should put work up on it. I know from Super Friendly, 10 years of having an agency site, and, you know, you just hinted at it as well. 10 years of having an agency site, we probably closed 2 clients from it. Like, so an agency site is not for closing clients. So correct. What's it for? And I think that's the question that doesn't feel answered yet. It's like, what I think it could be for is like a flex. So flex then, if it's not for closing business, then flex. What are you flexing? The wheel interaction could be cool. So are you flexing that like your devs are the best in the business and can build super cool stuff? Okay, that's a good flex. You know, like what I learned that case studies was for Super Friendly is it was good for recruiting. It was good for recruiting people who want to work with us, not clients who want to hire us. So if the site's for that, then like the case studies are really good. If the site is a flex, then flex. Like it looks too vanilla. If you got the best designers in the biz, we'll do something wild then. Like put some gothic serifs in there. Do some ridiculous motion. You know, do some dithering. You know, I don't like do any of that stuff.
These are great.
This is the thing that drives me nuts about designers. Like we're like designers in craft. We like are so good at it, and we're so tasteful and nuanced. And everybody uses a version of Helvetica on their website, right? It's like so then dial it up. You know, if it's really about a flex. Unless that's going to repel clients, but if the site's not about clients, then let it repel clients. You know, that's cool. So I don't see anything flex there. The wheel could be that, like maybe when we see the interaction,
it could be, yeah.
But like, what's the flex that you do on it?
Can I add on to that then? I think like, and I'm going to make this a little bit more applicable to like the junior designers that apparently we're all talking to. Is like I feel like the most dangerous thing that you can do with a portfolio is get caught in the middle ground of like this is good but not great. Whereas like one of my favorite portfolio sites is Gavin Nelson from Linear, and like that's a flex because there's nothing. It's just text and one cool hover interaction, and like you can flex on both ends of the spectrum. But if you're in the middle, then it looks like you are trying, but you didn't get very far.
That's really good. Can I? So I'm going to get on my CEO soapbox for 1 second here. I think that above all else, you prioritize speed and you prioritize like strategic initiatives, right? And so, for example, if you say that, hey, our existing site, which was temporary anyways, still has things that don't align with how we want to represent our actual business model, like the economics of what we do we either wait to give ourselves more time to flex, to make that perfect thing to put into the market that, you know, resonates for like us showing off all of our work and social proof and also is attractive for recruiting and all those things? Or do we optimize for speed and say, hey, even if it's for like a month and a half, let's just get something new out there because we at least need something new that aligns more directly with what our business is today. That's where to optimize for. And all these wonderful things of like, as designers, we want to pick this apart. We want to pick that apart. We want to think about that. Just throw it all out the window. Right. So here's the story behind this and why this is so fun. As I said, guys, I've lined up a dev to do this for us since we're too busy. Can we get him the stuff by end of day Friday? And I said that on Tuesday. Right. And so the site's already built. Right. So this all happened within 3 days, and they designed a concept. And I said, just go with that one. And then they designed a second concept. And I said, nope, we're not doing this. Pick one of the two and we're going to build it. And that's what happened. We built the second concept really quickly over the span of literally like 36 hours. And then have just been like iterating on the dev and interactions there. So I think that's one of the fun, like behind the scenes things is like, how much do you optimize for speed for go to market to kind of laser in on positioning versus like designing the perfect thing. right? And there's lots of conversation that can be had there about that.
I have
Especially if it's not driving leads.
Yeah.
And I have one last
they
thing to
don't.
add too, and we'll wind it down. But it's you have a personality. You've got some spicy takes. I think one of the things that gets undervalued is the long form sales letter. And I'm not suggesting you create like a long form sales letter on this. But what I mean by that is like you look at the old Basecamp website and it was like, hey, like here's our hot take. Here's how we think work should be done. Like this is what we value. And when you work with us, when you use our product, like this is what you're getting. Like, is there an abbreviated version of that would fit underneath that logo and byline that kind of is like, hey, I'm Hunter. This is how I think work should be done. Here's so I built an agency to do it that way, and it's kicked ass, and we're gonna do that for you.
You mean like this?
Is that okay? Yeah, there we go.
Tell me you've never been to off menu without telling me you've never been to off
the
menu.
old off menu website that I saw was not that one. I saw a different off menu website.
No, we have a letter. Yeah. We'll probably do something like
guys
that.
are friends.
Yeah. I think the trick is to figure that out in the near future. Yeah. This is such good feedback. I'm going to make sure it's all applied to the real site once we get there. And then I expect you fuckers to support the temporary site as best as you can when it comes out.
The MetaLab site could be like the way the MetaLab has worked for a long time. The MetaLab site could be, we built Slack. Do you want something like that? Get in touch. Like that's the site.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Agree.
Like,
totally
so all the rest is extraneous. So there's got to be a version of that for off menu. Like how do you actually win work? Like with Super Friendly, the way that we used to win work, the thing that our clients would say to us was the thing that spoke most to us was your contact page that basically said, here are all the reasons not to hire us. And then we got through that list and we were like, well, we're still here. So it must be us.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, I love that self-selection. Yeah. That's a really great constraint for copy.
You still have that list somewhere?
Yeah. I'm sure it's on the web archive somewhere. I'll pull it up.
Yeah. Sweet. I would love to see that.
Well, I know we're winding down. Red, Dan, thanks for joining. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for inviting.
We're gonna explore this stuff. I think what we've learned, Tommy, is that when we have guests, we need to have like some idea of like what the hell we're gonna talk about.
I thought it went fine, man.
It did. I think
it went fine. Well, hold on. We didn't rate this. So did Red fluster? No. What are your marks?
Red was cool.
Damn it.
He was too calm. I was
Dan took it easy on me. He took it easy. He's too kind. See, this is what I mean this is what I mean. He's too kind.
I just want to play basketball with him again, so I can't roast you.
I was waiting for a jab on the basketball performance there, Red. It didn't come.
I had it in my back pocket in case he started hitting me too hard with the design systems thing. But here, Dan is an expert. He diffused it right away by giving me just a little bit of a compliment out of the gate so that I couldn't use it. He stole my sword.
It's all part of my doxing strategy.
He's sneaky like that. He's sneaky. What are you guys doing for with the family next week? Turkey Day.
No turkey. My family doesn't like turkey, so something else. We did Wellingtons last year, so we might do that.
You did do Wellingtons last year, and they looked bomb.
Yeah, so we might do that again.
I put a text out in my family thread. And I said, hey, what if we didn't do turkey? I got ripped apart. All right, fine. Guess we're having turkey again.
We don't do turkey in this household.
Yeah.
So jealous.
Yeah, we do duck or steak typically.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
On that note, are we doing this on Friday?
I don't see why not. What Thanksgiving is
Thursday?
Is it Thanksgiving or is it Indigenous Peoples Day? One or the other. Whatever you prefer.
Yeah,
that's the day. That's Thursday, right?
Thursday.
I think next week, not Friday.
Yeah.
So I will be in Colorado, tuning in with a different mic and camera setup, but I'm game.
Maybe we would be cool.
So I like
awesome.
It.
Well, let's wrap it up. I got to go tend to a baby. This is super fun. Glad we could do this last minute. And we'll have you guys back for the eventual annihilation of Red at some point.
We'll get them.
I'll prepare better next time. Now I know what I'm walking into. I'll prepare better. That one's on me.
Awesome. All good. Cool. Awesome, guys.
Yeah.
See you
later, everyone.
And